What does the word conservative mean? People like Abigail Shapiro are stepping forward right now to define and redefine conservative. She has her own definition of conservative. She has her own definition that revolves around concepts like modesty. She would be ashamed if her own son grew up to be like Donald Trump. She would be ashamed if her father or her uncle lived like Donald Trump. Nothing in this world could be more morally repugnant to her than Donald Trump. And she sits here in silence, marketing herself as the new pretty-faced leader of conservatism and playing footsie with the Trump supporters.
When you meet a guy and immediately have a connection, you have one chance to make an impression. Do you want him to leave having your body at the forefront of his mind? Or you as a person? You as a person. Modesty is dressing in a way that doesn't sexualize your body. Modesty is a way for you to respect yourself and respect others. And do you want to be noticed for being beautiful or being sexy? If you are wearing something incredibly revealing, it will be difficult for him to focus on your personality. Instead, he might be focusing on your physical appeal. More men will think of you as a sex object if you dress like one than if you dress like a lady.
You may have heard me say this before. There is neither good nor evil. But there are people who care, there are people who don't. I'm a very harsh critic of what's going on the left wing, on the left end of the political spectrum. It horrifies me, it disappoints me in many ways. But you know what the tragedy is? On the left, I see a whole lot of people who care. I see a whole lot of people who are trying to make the world a better place, and they're even courageous in the pursuit of that positive change. Really, it's heartbreaking. They think that burning down a Wendy's restaurant will make the world a better place, and it won't. And they are courageous to the point of being self-destructive in the pursuit of that positive political and social change that they yearn for. So there's something there I can sympathize with, and of course there's a whole lot I can despise on the left. And you know, when people on the right wing, conservatives, when they're correct about something, I'm certainly eager to admit, I'm eager to recognize anyone for being right about anything in politics in the 21st century. But while the left wing may be simply too violent in the year 2020, what I see on the right really profoundly is a lot of cowardice. And, you know, very often I've said the deepest difference between the left and the right is the role of religion. But if we're keeping it all the way real, when I listen to left-wingers tell me why they think the drug ayahuasca is okay, it sounds religious to me. When I hear left-wingers tell me why it is they're in support of harm reduction drug policies and the government handing out fentanyl and cocaine and heroin to people, and you know, this totally encouraging pro-drug addict mentality, which stretches from ayahuasca all the way down to marijuana use. In many ways, that seems to me to reflect a kind of new age spiritual religious worldview, even if it is not religious in the same sense that the worldview of Abigail Shapiro so overtly is.
There was this one quote: imagine you found the love of your life and you realized you would do absolutely anything for them. Make that person you and do it. Something like that, something corny. I love a good corny quote. And even if you're in a relationship right now, do that for yourself, you know? Make yourself feel like the most loved person in the world.
So it's not so easy for me right now to say, oh, well, one worldview is secular and one is religious. They seem to be two very different religions, contending to be more politically influential. But I think there's a very important difference between someone who embraces the religion of their parents and grandparents and someone who, with whatever misguided motives, strikes out against the assumptions that have been inculcated into them by their parents, by their grandparents, by going to church, by going to Sunday school, and who tries on some kind of new religion or attempts to reinvent religion for themselves. And that is what's going on the left. All those people, I may ridicule them, and I do, I may ridicule them for convincing themselves that they can buy an airplane ticket to Mexico and get high on ayahuasca and speak to God. That's just insanity to me. But I know their grandparents didn't teach them that. I know they didn't learn that in Saturday school or Sunday school or some kind of religious school, right? They somehow cobbled together this new worldview, this new set of spiritual beliefs. They struck out on their own. They struck out against the authority of their parents and grandparents. And there's something courageous in that. It's tragic and misguided and self-destructive and wrong. And it winds up with people getting brain damage and people becoming drug addicts. And before it was ayahuasca, it was LSD. And I see the same mentality, But there's something very different about the religiosity of classically Abigail Shapiro. Something very different when she tells you that she is carrying on the same religion her parents had, and that she wants to transmit that to her children. She wants to make sure she raises her children with exactly the same religion. There's a real conformism, right, to her religiosity, to her worldview. There's a lack of any openness to trying new things, and we all know she didn't arrive at the conclusion that her parents' religion happened to be the best religion for her and her children through any kind of open-ended inquiry or study. I mean, I chose to move to Cambodia and study Cambodian as a language and history, culture, and so that might have been a terrible choice, but it was my choice. I didn't inherit the Cambodian language from my parents or Cambodian politics or anything else. Right? I chose that. I did some level of research and made that choice, and I get to live with the consequences, right? I'm learning Chinese now rather than Cambodian, by the way. Also my choice, in case you hadn't guessed. Didn't have a hand down. There's something very different. And I think that conformism, there are many knock-on consequences, psychologically, political, and others, but maybe one that we overlook is cowardice, is the unbelievable cowardice of these people who step forward to be the voices for conservatism, to define and redefine conservatism. And I do genuinely think Abigail Shapiro, classically Abby, I do think she has the potential to be one of the most influential voices in the next 10 years. We've seen so many kind of pretty-faced female would-be leaders for conservatism rise and fall, especially here on YouTube. Many of them turned out to just not even really be sincerely conservative. They were just kind of playing this as a way to build up their Instagram following, but they got a huge Instagram following. This is a pattern we've seen play out again and again.
There's actually a kind of see-through section on the side that has like lacing. And I don't think that's super modest. That's not my absolute favorite thing. I don't know whether I'll wear shorts or something over the top of this because of this, or if I'll sew a piece in.
Searching for Abigail Shapiro and Donald Trump, searching her Twitter, searching all over social media, I could barely find any mention of, any comment on Donald Trump. What does the word conservative mean? People like Abigail Shapiro are stepping forward right now to define and redefine conservative. She has her own definition of conservative. She has her own definition that revolves around concepts like modesty. She has her own method of reinventing feminism within this conservative Orthodox Jewish paradigm. How is it possible for her to hold her tongue and remain silent about what it is she thinks and feels about Donald Trump? She would be ashamed if her own son grew up to be like Donald Trump. She would be ashamed if her father or her uncle lived like Donald Trump. Nothing in this world could be more morally repugnant to her than Donald Trump. And she sits here in silence, marketing herself as the new pretty-faced leader of conservatism and playing footsie with the Trump supporters, right? What does conservatism mean? It fundamentally means that you're willing to engage in this kind of pious silence, that you're willing to live with this kind of self-censorship, this kind of cowardice. Right? I'm not claiming it's unique. I'm not claiming, no, sure. If you want to be a communist, there are a whole lot of things you got to remain silent about. There's a whole lot of pious silence on the far left. Sure, it's different. Topic for another video, and believe me, I've made those videos. Harsh condemnations of communism and the far left all over this channel. No answer. But in this particular video, we're talking about what's going on the right. And I can't even say the far right. This is mainstream American conservatism, where really the only issues are low taxes, abortion, God with a capital letter G. We're living in a world right now where the neoliberal paradigm has fallen. And everyone's been sitting around asking, who has the next great idea after neoliberalism ran out of gas, however you want to put it. And I got to tell you something, on the left, it's not Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is not the inspiring new direction for the left to go in after neoliberalism, right? And on the right wing, it's not Donald Trump. What is new about Trumpism? In both cases, these are old men promoting old ideas. You'll look in vain for some great innovation in terms of Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump. And I'm not saying they're wrong about everything, but let's be real. I would respect Abigail Shapiro. I would have tremendous ethical, moral, intellectual respect for her if she would make a video talking about Katie Johnson. Do you remember the name? Do you recognize the name, Katie Johnson? It might be you've forgotten it just because it's such a common name. But if you put that name into Google, what's the number one result? Katie Johnson was the woman who stepped forward to tell us all the horrifying story of how she lost her virginity to Donald Trump when she was only 13 years old. Katie Johnson had two witnesses willing to stand up for her in court. One was a 12-year-old girl at the time, witnessed to and participated in the same sordid scenario. But the other one was an adult woman, a woman who was herself guilty of orchestrating the meeting between Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein and these two underage girls. To say this case has merit would be an understatement. If you know nothing else, just knowing that the woman who basically pimped out these two underage girls was willing to step forward and testify in court as a witness to support the girl's story, that she was willing to incriminate herself, that she was willing to put herself in a prison cell to stand up for the truth, to get this on the historical record, or perhaps in her own mind, in her own heart, to atone for the harm she'd done. That woman, the woman who was the fixer and the arranger, that she stepped forward as a witness and she put her name on paper. She wrote out her testimony and handed it in. It's in those court documents for you to read. Don't you think it would count for something if people like Abigail Shapiro had the courage to step forward and say, whatever conservatism means, it excludes Donald J. Trump.
Dun, 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 dun.